Welcome to the Movie Magnet Podcast.
I'm Ilono.
And I'm Fali, and today we're breaking down Chikhai Bardo Season 2, Episode 7 of the TV show Severance. This is by far the best episode of this season. It's an episode with love, loss, many answers, but a lot more questions, so let's get started. It starts off with Gemma walking towards a building. It is revealed that she's visiting a blood donation drive and sits next to Mark. They don't seem to know each other yet. They bond over their students' assignments and books while they introduce themselves to each other. We notice here that the blood donation drive is by Lumon, so we already see Lumon play a role in their lives even before they met. Gemma, in the future, now at Lumon, in a green suit, then proceeds to get her blood extracted by a nurse. The nurse asks her where she went. We cut to Mark and Gemma in the past, who are now married in bed cuddling. We see that this episode has quite a few time jumps and references. The editor did an amazing job with this episode.
We now see the nurse checking her temperature and blood pressure. Notice that the blood pressure machine or the sphygmomanometer is made by Lumen. From this, we conclude that other than pharmaceuticals, they also deal with manufacturing medical equipment. There is an eye chart on the wall right next to it. We see a chart that's made of goats. This resembles the tumbling E chart. The tumbling E chart is used by people who cannot read or by children to test their vision. This may hint at Lumen having severed children as well. Or this may just be a throwback to the goat department in the earlier episodes and the constant references to goats throughout the series. It makes us wonder how these goats are used at Lumen. The nurse asks Gemma if she is eaten today and she responds in affirmation. She then gives Gemma some kidney shaped objects on her hands and turns on something called the worm meter. To recap, Woe is one of the four tempers. So we conclude that this machine is made by Lumen as well. The nurse then asks if she's done reading. She says she's read 50 pages and she's also completed her calisthenics.
The nurse then asks her a very weird question. She asks, if you were caught in a mudslide, would you be more afraid of suffocating or drowning? Gemma answers, drowning. We don't have any idea what this question means. Does this have anything to do with the reason why Gemma ended up at Lumon in the first place? Hopefully we find out in the upcoming episodes. Gemma then asks how many rooms she visited today. The reply was 6. Gemma then proceeds to enter a room that resembles a small dorm room. A twin bed, closet with a mirror and drawers, a metal opening on the right side of her bed. On the left of her bed, we see a table with small shelves which is used to store towels. We have a full-length mirror right next to it. We see a green and white theme going on here. Gemma is in a green pajama, her room is mostly green and white as well. And the walls of her room are a darker shade of green. We already know the color blue signifies MDR, who are severed employees. So we yet again see color having a huge role here.
Gemma slides a closet door which contains her outfit for the day. The outfit is a dark red dress, black shoes, a black bob wig, dark brown bracelet, and a dark brown bag. She has a dressing table with a round mirror and a lamp right next to it. She exits from the room wearing her outfit of the day and enters into a room that has two light green sofas, a stack of books which is horizontally lined up, a kitchen sink, and tabletop with minimal equipment. She presses a button and opens the door, exiting her accommodation. She meets the nurse and the nurse escorts her from there. Upon opening the door, we see it leads to a white hallway, similar to that of the severed floor. They pass by rooms with labels of different locations like Allentown, Cairns, Dransville, Siena, Loveland, Tumwater, and Wellington. These are the file names being worked by MDR. For instance, in season 1, it was mentioned that Allentown was the first file Mark completed, and he completed it in record time. Tumwater is a file that Dylan was working on. Gemma stops at Wellington door. The nurse asks if she is ready and places her hand where the instrument sucks her blood from her middle finger. She flinches in pain, but the door opens. The blood seems to play an important role at Lumen as well. First, we see that the blood donation camp was by Lumen. We see Gemma's blood being extracted again at Lumen, and now the nurse's blood is required to open the elevator rooms.
While she enters the door, we hear the ding sound which tells us she's turned into her innie. She enters a room which looks like the dentist's office. She hears the same whistle we heard in episode 5 by the white coat guy. He appears to be carrying a trolley of dental equipment like the last time we saw him. He sees Gemma and says, "There she is." She asks him if she could get the break, but the dentist says it's been 6 weeks. Gemma says she was just here. The guy laughing says no one likes to be at the dentist. His name, or one of his names, is revealed as Dr. Mauer later in the episode. We then get more flashbacks from pre-Severance Mark and Gemma during their dating days. Mark visits Gemma in her office, carrying a small gift, an ant farm since Gemma said she liked ants, but she actually said she liked plants. So we see a lot of plant references throughout the episode. Future Gemma's room also has pictures of plants next to her bed. We see her tending to various plants such as hibiscus throughout the episode.
Then we get a scene in Mark and Gemma's home where Gemma sees a crib from IKEA in their home, and Mark jokingly says he can assemble it as he's quite handy. In this room of theirs, we see a huge French poster, which is an ad from World War One. It encourages citizens to subscribe to the national loan. It is basically the state asking for help for borrowing money from its citizens. Hence the term "aide moi," meaning help me. This may be a reference to Mark being a history teacher. We cut to a montage of Mark and Gemma living happily. We also see Gemma's reading a book called Haji Murad. Haji Murad hated the Russian Empire but had to form an alliance for revenge. This is probably a reference to Gemma being a Russian teacher. We're now at a dinner party with the couple and Mark's sister Devon and her husband Rickon. There's a subtle interaction between Gemma and Devon, where Devon is about to pour wine in Gemma's glass, but she covers the glass and declines, subtly hinting that she's pregnant. But we then see Gemma in the bathroom in pain with blood running down her legs, showing us there has been a miscarriage. Mark rushes to console her and she's heartbroken. Now Mark and Gemma are in a fertility clinic where a familiar face passes by. The dentist from earlier, or Mr. Mauer, is passing by them in the hallway. We now think maybe Lumen is trying to recruit patients as their potential innies. We know Lumen is connected to most pharmaceutical and adjacent industries. They already have Gemma's blood samples from the earlier blood donation drive. So maybe Lumen selected Gemma as a perfect candidate for their experiments as she's met certain requirements they were looking for. We now cut to Mark and Gemma's home and they start the fertility injectable drugs.
This episode also reveals to us a lot about the importance of what MDR does. While MDR are refining their numbers, they are also being observed by these mysterious people who look almost like the MDR employees themselves. Each employee is responsible to observe the progress of each innie. For MDR, we see another set of 4 employees, 3 male and 1 female, observing Mark, Irving, Dylan, and Helly. It's a funny observation to make, but the characteristics of these employees also resemble the characteristics of the employees they are monitoring. There is a camera on each MDR employee's computer through which they are being monitored. Additionally, they also have access to the screen of the MDR employees. The guy observing Mark sees he's completed the Dransville file and is now working on the Cold Harbor file. This mysterious room is overseen by none other than Mr. Drummond, who talks to a guy who looks like Dr. Mauer but with a comical mustache. He asks if the severance barriers are holding, to which the doctor answers, yes. Severance barriers are maybe the technology needed to activate the innie. They may need to be in specific location to activate the innies, but we saw MDR was activated somewhere which is not in the severed floor like in episode 4. We also know that they can be activated in the outside world due to the overtime contingency. So we still have questions on how exactly innies are activated. We see a snippet of the files that are completed by Mark S. He's completed 24 files. Cold Harbor will be the 25th.
We cut to Gemma at Lumen getting her head scanned by the same dentist, aka Dr. Mauer. She is now being asked how she feels, which she replies her mouth hurts, and then she asks how many rooms she visited. She has visited the Billings room, the Lucknow room, the St. Pierre room, the Karen's room, the Zurich room, the Wellington room. We think Gemma is only going to the rooms that have the same names as Mark S's completed files. Since we don't see the file names the other Innies worked on, such as Montauk, which was worked by Irving earlier. She is then asked if she remembered anything from those rooms, to which she replied, nothing. She didn't remember anything. We think that they constantly monitor Gemma to see if the severance procedure is working correctly. If she doesn't remember anything, it would mean that the process is going smoothly. The next question is loaded. She is asked how she felt while walking through the halls and if she exited any of the rooms feeling despair, fervor, or gaiety. Instead of answering, Gemma informs them that there's only been one room that she hasn't been, and today it had a name on it. To which the doctor answers, Cold Harbor.
Gemma asks what happens when she's been in all the rooms. The doctor replies, "You will see the world again, and the world will see you." Whatever that means, it probably means a breakthrough in Lumon's research, and she's gonna be presented in front of the whole world for being the subject of said breakthrough. But Lumon, being Lumon, they're being cryptic about it. She asks if she'll see Mark again, and he replies Mark will benefit from the world you're siring, and that Kier will take away his pain just as Kier has taken away hers. The word siring is an interesting term to use as it's usually used in the context of giving birth. Is Lumon planning to reincarnate Kier through Gemma somehow? What are your thoughts on this? Comment down below. After hearing this absurd sentence from Dr. Maurer, she replies, "Can you please just talk like a normal person?" "Yes, please, Lumen Management. Please, talk like regular people."
We see Gemma following her routine at Lumen, waking up, brushing her teeth, and wearing the outfit of the day that has been picked out for her. We see this isn't her typical Miss Casey look. It's a suit with a curly head wig. She enters the room turning into an innie where there's a plane crash simulation. Dr. Mauer, now dressed up as a flight attendant, says this is perfectly normal and serves her a meal. We cut back to seeing Outie Gemma exercising, wearing her usual green pajamas. We see the same person monitoring her who's also monitoring Mark. Mr. Drummond says Cold Harbor is 96% complete, but the nosebleed set them back. He informs Dr. Mauer that when Mark is done with the file, he would have to say goodbye to her. Mr. Drummond asks Dr. Mauer why he's wearing that stupid Christmas sweater. Dr. Mauer walks off without responding. In the room, we see the employees are monitoring MDR. We see one seat is missing, indicating that the employee monitoring Irving is gone as well, since Irving was dismissed earlier.
Gemma now dresses up in a red Christmas robe and wears a ring, rolling her eyes. She turns into an innie and enters a room which is Christmas themed, and we see that Dr. Mauer is dressed up in a Christmas sweater for this room. Gemma's innie writes a letter on her left hand, thanking Miss Tisdale for the thoughtful Christmas gift for her and her husband. They've never owned an electric grouter. They look forward to the many happy memories it will provide. Her writing is terrible, probably because she's right-handed as seen in the episode in other scenes, and they're making her write on her left hand. Her hands start trembling because she's been writing so many letters. Dr. Mauer, who is now playing her husband, says it's the last one. She finishes the last letter when she asks when will she be finished. He tells her that she's done, but Christmas comes around each year. She responds by saying it's always Christmas.
From this, we deduce that our speculations of her having different innies other than Miss Casey are confirmed. Each room she goes to has a separate innie, and that innie doesn't remember anything other than that room. The innies do not know the existence of other innies, and her outie doesn't remember what happens in those rooms at all. Since Mark has completed 24 files, we think Gemma has 24 innies in total, and the final innie would be the Cold Harbor innie. Gemma is now eating cake. Dr. Mauer visits Gemma. He asks her how she's feeling. She says her hand hurts. He asks what room caused her hand to hurt. She responds saying it's Allentown. This guy is the best actor. He is the one who ordered her to write letter after letter and cause her pain, and now he's acting oblivious. The three rooms she goes to, Allentown, Wellington, and the flight room, shows Gemma in a great deal of pain and trauma. Maybe Lumen is creating rooms specifically to test out such painful events, to one day enable regular people to be severed while going through them, and not just for work. We've already seen the lady from baby camp being severed to forget about the pain of her childbirth. Maybe Lumen is trying to test if they're successful in erasing other traumatic and painful memories as well.
Gemma says she wants to go home. Dr. Maurer says her husband remarried last year and has a daughter now. He's such a jerk for blatantly lying to her. Dr. Maurer probably knows Gemma wanted to have a kid with Mark, and he uses this information to hurt her and to stop her thinking about him. Gemma, who doesn't like staying at Lumon, says she doesn't believe him. The doctor says she's been gone a long time and Mark has moved on. He says maybe she's moved on in one of these rooms too. The doctor seems to have a weird obsession with Gemma. He says maybe she felt things in one of those rooms she never felt with Mark, and maybe he's seen it. While the doctor picks up a book, Gemma takes a chair and knocks the doctor out. She quickly takes his black security card and runs out of her room. She dodges the nurse and runs to the main elevator, accessing it through the black card she stole from Dr. Maurer. She successfully manages to reach the upper floor, but this causes her to turn into Miss Casey, as she's now in the severed floor.
Mr. Milchick, who is out of breath, opens the door to the exports hallway, where he sees Miss Casey come out of the elevator in her green pajamas. She thinks something is wrong and asks him what's going on. He says her outie entered the wrong elevator and this is the reason for the confusion. He asks her to go back inside the elevator without allowing her to ask further questions. She descends to the bottom floor to the elevator and turns back to Gemma. Realizing that her escape attempt has failed, she cries when the nurse takes her back. This may not be her first attempt to escape or cause trouble, as Mr. Drummond said earlier that she tried to cut Dr. Maurer's fingers. Poor Gemma is trapped here. Ah. Now on to Mark's side, we see Ragabi checking Mark's health along with Devin. She says he'll be okay and there's nothing long term to worry about. Devin seems to be confused about this and asks her many questions. Due to her relentless questioning, Ragabi finally reveals to her that Mark is reintegrating. Devin, who is understandably worried at the revelation, tells her to keep her hands off of Mark and not to mess with him any further. Ragabi responds by saying that it's what he wants. Devon opposes her by saying what he wants is to know if Gemma is alive or not. Ragabi then states that Gemma is alive and leaves. This statement is slightly different from what Ragabi told Mark. When Mark previously asked her if Gemma was alive, she tells him Gemma was alive last time she saw her. So, what do you think? Does Ragavi know the truth about Gemma and is deliberately withholding information from Mark, or is she telling the truth?
After some time, we see Mark is still unconscious and Devon wants to do something about it. But Ragabi says he's journeying through his memories and will wake up when he's done. Devon suggests her plan of taking Mark to the birthing cottage and to talk to any Mark. Ragabi is familiar with it, even naming it the Demona birthing retreat. To which Rigabi replies that what they're doing and what she's suggesting are two different things. One is trying to talk to Inimark, and one is trying to get Gemma out. Devon, not convinced, thinks her brother will die if they don't do anything. Then Devon suggested the most out-of-character thing to Rigabi. She suggests to call Harmony Cobell, also known as the former severed floor manager, Outie Mark Stalker, and lactation fraud Harmony Cobell. Calling Cobell for information on how to go to the Inni cabin would be risking everything Outie Mark has done to this point just for Devon to talk to Inni Mark. Regabi says Cobell is a soldier raised by Lumon and she will turn Devon and Mark to Lumon if Cobell even hears any whisper of what Regabi and Mark are up to. Hence Regabi says she's out of this operation if she calls Cobell and walks out. This makes Devon contemplate her decision. While she's thinking about calling Miss Cobell, she hears Mark whisper something to her. He's trying to say Chikhai Bardo, which is the title of the episode.
Chikai Bardo is a Buddhist term. It is the fourth stage of a total of 6 stages that a soul experiences: 3 stages in life and 3 stages in death. It describes the first stage leading up to death. This scene cuts to Mark looking at a table of cards. These are the cards that we've seen before in season 1 from the optics and design team. We also see that this is the same card that was stolen by Dylan, which is card 7197. Additionally, we also see that the same card was featured in Mr. Milchick's performance review. We think that the Chikai Bardo also may be the name of this card, inferring from how Mark was referring to it. Looking at this card, Mark says it looks like two people are fighting. Gemma clarifies this by saying it's the same person fighting against himself, defeating his own psyche. Ego death. This connects well to what the term Chikai Bardo means as well, as stage 4 is the first stage of death. Mark asks her, how does she know it's the same guy? She responds saying the hair is the same. This is also self referential to the episode where we see Mark with multiple hairstyles. Outie Mark here has more of a slick back hair, while we see Innie Mark with his usual hairstyle.
He asks if the cards came in the mail. She confirms this and infers she may be getting these mails because she accidentally got into the fertility clinic's mailing list. We don't think this is an accident at all. We saw the dentist who works at Lumon in the fertility clinic as well, so we're sure Lumon is connected to this. Also, since the cards are the same cards we saw earlier, we think Lumon may be looking for potential severance test subjects or employees through these mails and surveys. Mark asks her why she's engaging in all of this. Gemma gets angry and says because she likes it. Mark says she might be overreacting, then she responds saying not to tell her how she's feeling, revealing that she's actually feeling like shit. Mark then proposes for them to stop all of this. Eventually, we see Mark and Gemma being sad at their failed attempts to conceive, with Mark even taking down the crib he built. However, they work through it and learn to remain happy regardless. A few days later, Mark seems to have work due the next day, so he asks her to go to the charade sting on her own. She says she'll be back by 10 and leaves saying I love you to Mark. At night, we see the cops at Mark's door and he looks worried. This may be the night she was taken away when Mark thought she's dead. Mark in the present time wakes up and Devon is relieved. He remembers Gemma and cries.
And now, that's the end of our breakdown this episode. Please like, share, and subscribe if you liked our video. This is the Movie Magnet Podcast. See you next episode. Bye.